The sound of paper tearing was brutally sharp in the dead silence of the glass-walled conference room. Reap. A dry, decisive sound, like the snap of a trust that had been rotten for a long time. It was 10 a.m. on a Tuesday in Manhattan, inside one of the most expensive law offices in the city, with a sweeping view of Central Park. But I had no mind left for the scenery. All my attention was locked on the man sitting across from me, Carter, my husband for 5 years and now the greatest enemy of my life. Carter curled his lip into that signature half-smile I used to think was charming. Now it was just nausea-inducing arrogance. He let the shredded pieces flutter down onto the glossy mahogany table like he was feeding pigeons in the park. "There," Carter said lightly, brushing his hands off as if he'd just finished a minor chore. "Our prenup. Now it's trash, Sophia. Just like this marriage." He leaned back in the leather chair, fingers laced behind his head, flashing the $80,000 Patek Philippe watch I'd bought him for our anniversary last year. "My lawyer says that without the original, and considering I've carried the company image for the last 5 years, we'll split assets 50-50 under common law. Actually, I'm going to demand 60% for emotional damages." His personal attorney, a well-fed man squeezed into an overtight suit, nodded shamelessly along. I stared at the pile of scraps on the table. That was the only original copy Carter believed existed. He thought that tearing it up in front of me and my attorney erased the line between our assets. He thought he'd just made a genius move. I didn't scream. I didn't cry or lunge at him the way he clearly expected. I simply adjusted the hem of my blazer and took a slow breath through the heavy stench of his expensive cologne, mixed with the cold leather smell of the room. "My name is Sophia. It means wisdom. And today, I was going to live up to it." "You're sure about what you just did, Carter?" I asked. So calm it surprised even me. "More sure than ever, sweetheart," he scoffed. "Stop pretending you're tough. You're a good programmer. I'll give you that. But you don't know how to play power games. Without me, you're just a bookworm typing code in the dark. I'm the face of this company. I deserve everything." The face of the company. That phrase triggered a slow-motion reel in my head and dragged me back 7 years. Back then, Carter wasn't Mr. Entrepreneur on a Forbes cover. He was just a freshly graduated marketing guy with a smooth mouth and an empty wallet. And me? I was the messy-haired girl with dark circles from staying up all night coding algorithms for Nexus, the data analytics platform that would later become a $100 million empire. I remember those freezing winter nights in our cramped Brooklyn rental. While I hunted bugs until 3 a.m., hands shaking from cold and too much caffeine, Carter was asleep, or out drinking beer with friends. He always said, "You handle the tech, I'll handle the vision." What was his vision? Charging client lunches to my credit card? Buying expensive suits to build an image while I was still wearing a worn-out hoodie? When Nexus started taking off, I was naive. I loved him. I let him be listed as CEO. I let him go on TV and do interviews. I let him take the spotlight. Because I believed we were a team. I was the brain, he was the face. A perfect division of labor. But I forgot something basic my grandmother always told me. Never hand the vault key to someone who only knows how to spend money, not make it. The prenup was the one thing I refused to give up. On my father's advice. A retired old attorney. Carter signed it reluctantly the night before the wedding, eyes glued to his phone texting someone, muttering that I was calculating and didn't believe in eternal love. The contract stated clearly, any assets formed from Nexus's original source code were my sole intellectual property. And now he'd torn it up. Right in front of me. All because he was chasing a long-legged new secretary who'd been at the company for 3 months. Someone he thought I didn't know about. "All right," I said, cutting off my own thoughts. I signaled to my attorney, Ms. Henderson, a steel-spined woman with short silver hair. She smiled, a razor-sharp smile, and slid a navy blue folder across the table toward Carter. "What is this?" Carter frowned. The grin on his face flickered out. "This is a countersuit," I said, my voice ice. "And a small gift. You want a divorce? Fine. But you won't get a single cent from Nexus. And you'll be out of my penthouse by noon today." Carter burst into loud laughter that echoed off the glass walls. "Are you kidding? I just ripped up your little good luck charm, Sophia. Now we go to court as equals. I'll take half the company, half the cash, and the dog too. Who do you think you're scaring?" He stood, rebuttoned his suit jacket, and looked at me with pity. "You're pathetic, Sophia, clinging to meaningless paper. See you in court. Better get your checkbook ready." He turned and walked out with the swagger of a winner. But he'd made a fatal mistake. One narcissists always make. They get so confident in their own cleverness that they forget their opponent is the one who built the entire logic system from zero. He thought tearing paper was the end of it. He didn't know that in my world, tech, deleting never means gone. He forgot I wasn't just his wife. I was Nexus's mother. And I've always had a habit of backing up anything important in my life. I watched his back as he left, my finger tapping lightly on the table in a steady rhythm. The game wasn't over, Carter. It was just beginning. And you were going to wish you'd never learned how to tear paper. If you want to see how miserable Carter becomes when he realizes he picked the wrong woman to provoke, hit subscribe right now. You won't want to miss what comes next. People always say, money doesn't change who you are, it just removes the mask. With Carter, money didn't just remove the mask. It burned it to ash. The change didn't happen overnight. It was like malicious code running silently in the background, spreading until it shattered the entire system. At first, it started with small things. Carter became obsessed with appearances. Tailored Italian suits replaced off-the-rack clothes. Dinners at Per Se or 11 Madison Park replaced pizza nights and Netflix at home. I told myself it was normal. We'd worked hard. We deserved to enjoy it, right? But enjoyment turned into arrogance. About 2 years ago, when Nexus hit a $50 million valuation, Carter started acting like he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. In board meetings, he'd cut me off in front of investors. "Sophia handles the technical stuff. She doesn't understand the big market picture," he'd say, patting my shoulder like I was a helpful intern. I stayed quiet. I thought, he's under pressure. I shouldn't embarrass him in public. That was my first mistake. My willingness to bend fed the monster inside him. The worst humiliation came 6 months ago. I remember that morning perfectly. I walked into the office and saw Ms. Higgins, our HR manager from the earliest days, packing her things, eyes red. She was the one who shared her last sandwich with me when the company was struggling. "What happened, Ms. Higgins?" I asked, panicked. She choked out, "Mr. Carter, he fired me. He said I'm too old and I don't fit the company's new energetic image." I stormed straight into Carter's office, fury burning in my chest, but the sight inside made me stop cold. Perched on the edge of Carter's desk was Amber, 22 years old, legs for days, wearing a skirt so short it violated the dress code. She was giggling while Carter ran his hand through her shiny blonde hair. "Oh, Sophia." Carter looked up, completely unbothered. "Meet Amber, our new head of HR. She'll bring fresh energy to Nexus." "Head of HR?" I hissed. "She hasn't even finished college, Carter. You fired Ms. Higgins to bring your mistress in?" Carter stood, his face hardening. He leaned in close and used that terrifying whisper he'd picked up from fake power players. "Don't do crazy jealous wife drama here, Sophia. Amber has networking skills. And most importantly, she knows how to listen. You should go back to your server room. Don't interfere with how I run my company." My company. That sentence hit like ice water to the face. In that moment, whatever love I had left died. It didn't die loudly. It died quietly, like a computer shutting off when the plug gets pulled. I didn't argue. I didn't slap Amber or throw a drink in her face, even though she was staring at me with that smug, triumphant look. Fine, I said lightly. You're the CEO. I turned and walked away. Carter and Amber laughed, thinking I'd surrendered. They thought I was a weak wife who would swallow anything. They forgot what I do for a living. I'm a data engineer. I don't respond with emotion. I respond with data. From that day on, I lived two lives. By day, I was the quiet wife, the fated co-founder. By night, when Carter slept or claimed he was out entertaining clients until morning, I started hunting. I activated God mode on the company servers, a level of access Carter didn't even know existed because he'd never bothered reading technical documentation. And I started collecting. Every email he sent Amber, full of vulgar promises about dumping the boring wife once he took full control of the shares. Every five-star hotel receipt, every Maldives vacation disguised as market development travel. Every suspicious transfer out of the company fund into a shell consulting firm called Blue Horizon, which I quickly traced to Amber's mother as the legal owner. I printed everything. Bank statements, GPS logs from his Tesla. He forgot I set up the master account. Explicit chats on an encrypted messaging app he believed was safe. Nothing is safe from the person who wrote the security code for the entire system. Each piece of evidence felt like a knife in my heart, and also a bullet loaded into the legal weapon I was preparing. It hurt. But it also gave me that cold, hunting thrill of someone driving prey into a trap. And while digging through the trash Carter left behind, I found the real, secret weapon. It wasn't just proof of cheating or petty embezzlement. In an old 2018 file buried deep in Carter's personal Google Drive, synced to his work laptop out of pure laziness, I found a scan. A legal document Carter had signed with our first angel investor in exchange for seed money, and then hidden from me because he was afraid I'd reject the terms. He forgot it existed. Or he assumed it had expired. I read every line of fine print, and my eyes lit up. Clause 14, Section C. A legal poison pill Carter had unknowingly planted in his own throne. It spelled out stock ownership rights if a founder violated business ethics or committed financial fraud. Even more important, it directly referenced the prenup Carter had just torn up that morning. At 3:00 a.m., alone in my office, blue light washing over my face, I smiled, without a trace of warmth. Carter thought he was playing chess with me. He didn't know I designed the board. I closed my laptop. The file was complete. The silence was over. Tomorrow was the asset meeting, and I had a performance ready that Carter would never forget. The air in the conference room thickened, heavy as lead. The second hand on the wall clock ticked like the countdown of a time bomb. Carter had dropped back into his chair, his earlier triumph shifting into impatience. He drummed his fingers on the table, eyes flicking to the clock over and over. He probably had lunch plans with Amber, or a shopping spree to celebrate his early win. All right, Sophia. Carter's lawyer slid a new paper toward me. Let's not waste each other's time. Here's the settlement. We're being generous. 30% of the penthouse value, and you can keep your old car. In exchange, you give up all rights to Nexus. Sign it and we go our separate ways. Carter added in that patronizing tone. Sign it, babe. I've got a meeting at 11. Don't make me bring up your inability to have children in court to gain leverage. I'm trying to spare you the last bit of dignity. That sentence was a slap. Infertility was the deepest wound I carried, the reason I buried myself in work to forget. And now he was using it like a weapon to blackmail me. Ms. Henderson started to stand and protest, but I placed a hand on hers. Calm. I looked Carter straight in the eyes. No pain, no submission. Just the coldness of a machine executing the command. Delete. Carter, I said, low and clear. Do you remember the first data storage lesson I ever taught you? Of course you don't. You never listened to me for more than 3 minutes. I pulled my iPad Pro from my purse, flipped it open, and connected it to the large screen at the end of the table. What are you doing? Carter scoffed, leaning back. Putting up a slide deck about lost love? Or a video of you crying and begging me to come back? No, I said, my finger moving fast. I'm going to show you something more interesting. Something you think you just tore up. On the screen appeared a crisp image of our prenuptial agreement. Not the shredded paper on the table. This was the digital original, with a bright red electronic seal from the New York State Notary Office, plus a blockchain hash that couldn't be forged. You tore up the paper printout, I explained slowly, like I was teaching a slow child. But this digital original has been stored on 3 independent cloud servers and was electronically notarized the moment you signed it. Under current electronic transactions law, it carries the same legal force, arguably more, because it can't be physically destroyed. Carter's smile stiffened for a split second, but he recovered quickly and tried to shrug it off. So what? At worst, it means a longer court fight. I've got the best lawyers. I'll prove you forced me to sign it while I wasn't mentally stable. I knew you'd say that, I said, a thin smile. Which is why the prenup is just the appetizer. The main course is right here. I swiped again. Another document filled the screen, older, with dated formatting. Founder Shareholders Agreement, Nexus Inc., 2018. Carter's face changed. What the hell is that? You don't remember? I said, feigning surprise. In 2018, when we took our first $50,000 from Mr. Peterson. He was a veteran investor, extremely meticulous. He required both founders, me and you, to sign this to protect the company. That piece of junk has nothing to do with this, Carter barked, sweat starting to bead on his forehead. Peterson cashed out years ago. That's expired. Peterson cashed out, yes, I nodded. But the agreement between co-founders stays in effect permanently until the company IPOs or dissolves. And you, Carter, because you were too lazy to read legal terms, missed Clause 14, Section C. I zoomed in. The black text sat on the screen like a death sentence. Clause 14C, the bad leaver provision. In the event that a founder shareholder is found to have committed financial fraud, embezzlement of company funds, or serious ethical misconduct that harms the company's reputation, including but not limited to an illicit relationship with a subordinate employee in the workplace, that person shall be stripped of ownership of all unlisted shares. I paused long enough for the words to sink in, then read the most important line. These shares shall be forcibly sold back to the remaining founder shareholder at the original par value price of 0.01 mont per share. The room went so silent you could hear the fat lawyer swallow. Carter shot up so fast his chair slammed backward. Are you insane? I'm the CEO. I hold 51%. You can't use a 7-year-old piece of toilet paper to steal my company. Still not understanding the problem, Carter? I said, voice flat, power ringing through it. Power I'd hidden for 5 years. I'm not stealing. I'm enforcing a contract. What do you think I've been doing for the last 6 months? Crying over this marriage. I tapped again. A new set of data appeared. Here's proof you transferred $2.4 million into Amber's mother's shell company, Blue Horizon, I said, pointing at the red numbers. That's embezzlement of company assets. And here, I swiped again. An ugly, grainy video clip filled the screen. Carter and Amber, having sex in this very conference room, on the same table we were sitting at. That's proof of severe workplace misconduct. Carter's face went from red to paper white, then to bruised purple. His lawyer snatched the folder, hands shaking as he flipped through documents, sweat pouring down into his collar. She's right, Carter, the lawyer stammered, voice trembling. This clause, It's drafted tightly. Your signature is here. Notarized. If this goes to court with that embezzlement evidence, you won't just lose shares, you could go to prison. Carter froze. The glossy world he'd built on lies was collapsing under his feet. He looked at me, and for the first time in 7 years I saw fear instead of contempt. Sophia. His voice cracked, weak as breath. You can't do this. We're married. Nexus is our baby. Our baby? I cut in, standing and stepping toward him, one slow step at a time. You just used my infertility to humiliate me 5 minutes ago. Now I'm going to show you what it feels like to lose your baby. I pulled out a fresh document and slapped it onto the table, right on top of the shredded prenup pieces. This is the stock transfer agreement under the bad leaver clause. By the numbers, you're 51%, at 0.001 per share. I pulled out a calculator and punched the buttons with deliberate mockery. The total I have to pay to buy your entire career back is $510.50. I opened my wallet, pulled out a $500 bill and a $20 bill, and tossed them onto the table. Keep the change for coffee. You have 60 seconds to sign, or I send the entire embezzlement file to the FBI immediately. The wall clock started counting down. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Time felt warped inside the icy conference room. The loose cash, 5 1054s, sat on the glossy mahogany like a joke and a tragedy at once. That was the price of 5 years of my life, and the price of Carter's stupidity. Carter stared at the money, eyes wide as if they might pop out of his skull. His breathing turned fast and broken, a hiss through his teeth like a cornered animal. Sophia, he choked out, gripping the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. You can't. You can't do this. Do you even know what Nexus is valued at? $120 million? My shares are worth over $60 million. You're forcing me to sell for $500? This is robbery. I folded my arms and leaned against the table, looking down at him with a mix of pity and disgust. No, Carter, I said coldly. I'm not forcing you. Your signature in 2018 is forcing you. Your greed is forcing you. And most importantly, I tilted my head toward the iPad, still showing the transfer logs. One aim. That $2.4 million wire to your mistress's mother is forcing you. I turned to Carter's attorney. The man who'd been so cocky earlier was now shrunk in on himself, sweat soaking his collar. He was frantically stuffing papers into his briefcase, avoiding my eyes. Counselor, I said, do you want to advise your client about the sentencing range for corporate embezzlement and federal tax fraud? The lawyer flinched. Under RICO and financial fraud statutes. If convicted, it can be up to 20 years in prison. And all assets can be seized. He pivoted to Carter, pleading, Listen, Carter, I can't defend you in this. The evidence is too strong. Blockchain data is non-deniable. If she submits this to the FBI, you're done. I'm withdrawing from this case. I'm not losing my license for covering up a crime. Get back here, Carter screamed, grabbing his lawyer's sleeve. I pay you to fight. The lawyer yanked his arm free, fear in his eyes. Your money is dirty now, Carter. Figure it out yourself. And he practically ran out of the room, leaving Carter alone on the battlefield. Just the two of us. I glanced at the clock. 45 seconds, Carter. He turned to me, eyes bloodshot, trying one last manipulation move. He dropped to his knees. Yes. The man who'd acted like a king, now kneeling at my feet. Sophia, baby. He clutched at the hem of my dress, voice breaking. I was wrong. I swear I was wrong. Amber. She seduced me. She tricked me. I only love you. Please. Just this once. Don't make me sign. Don't send me to prison. We can start over. I'll fire Amber right now. I stepped back and shook his hand off my dress like I was brushing off an insect. Stand up, Carter. Don't make me more nauseous than I already am, I said, flat. You're not crying because you regret it. You're crying because you got caught. And start over? Who do you think I am? Some idiot programmer who only knows how to type. I bent close and whispered into his ear. I heard about you and Amber laughing at me at the Christmas party last year. You called me a walking ATM. Well, the ATM swallowed your card, Carter. I straightened, my voice turning to steel. 30 seconds. I picked up his Mont Blanc pen, the one I gave him when he became CEO, and placed it on the stock transfer agreement. Your choice. 1. Sign, take $500, walk out, and never come back. You lose the company, but you keep your freedom. 2. Walk out without signing. I hit send and forward everything to the IRS and the FBI. You lose the company, you lose your freedom, and you'll probably end up being somebody's wife in prison. Carter stared at the paper. His throat made choking sounds. Sweat dripped onto the table right beside the signature line. 15 seconds. I placed my finger on the iPad's keyboard, hovering over enter. 10. 9. Carter's hand shook as he grabbed the pen. He looked at me one last time, hoping for softness. All he found was the reflection of a woman who'd been betrayed too many times to offer mercy. 5. All right, I'll sign. I'll sign, Carter screamed, voice cracking with desperation. He jammed the pen onto the paper, hand trembling so hard the signature came out like a child's scribble. With that signature, he officially surrendered 51% of the Nexus empire back to me. He let the pen drop and collapsed forward, breathing hard. I calmly pulled the paper back and checked the signature. Perfect. I clipped it into my folder and snapped my briefcase shut. The click of the lock sounded like music. Then I picked up the remaining $20 bill and slid it into Carter's sweat-soaked suit pocket. Done, I said. Security is waiting at the elevator. They have orders to escort you out of the building immediately. Don't try to take anything. Not your laptop, not your company phone. Everything is Nexus property now. Carter lifted his head. His eyes were hollow, empty. He stood unsteadily like a drunk man. He looked around the luxury conference room one last time, his kingdom. Now it was sealed to him. You're cruel, Sophia, he whispered. No, Carter, I smiled, my brightest smile in 5 years. I'm not cruel. I'm contract compliant, and the contract is over. He stumbled out, pathetic and broken, nothing like the swaggering man who walked in 30 minutes earlier. The door closed behind him. I stood alone in the giant room and took a deep breath. The air no longer smelled like Carter's cologne. It smelled like freedom. It smelled like victory. I picked up my phone and called Ms. Higgins, the HR manager Carter fired. Hello, Ms. Higgins? It's Sophia. Are you free? I'd like to invite you back. And this time, your salary will be double. Also, get ready to recruit a new CEO. First requirement, he has to read contracts. I ended the call and looked out over New York City pulsing below. The empire was finally back in the hands of its rightful owner. 14 months. Long enough for trees to change leaves, long enough for the Earth to complete a full orbit, and long enough to completely reshape 2 lives. I stood in front of the large mirror in the VIP lounge at the Javits Center in New York. Today was the day Nexus officially IPO'd on the NASDAQ. In the mirror, I wasn't the hoodie-wearing, sleep-deprived coder from 7 years ago, and I wasn't the quiet wife hiding behind her husband from 2 years ago. The woman in the mirror wore a perfectly tailored navy evening gown. She looked powerful, calmly confident. On the cover of this month's Forbes, my face was printed under a bold headline, Sophia, the silent genius who woke the tech giant. No Carter, no visionary man, just me, and the code that built the empire. Ms. Higgins, now the powerhouse chief people officer, walked in holding a glass of sparkling wine. She smiled, proud like a mother. "It's time, Madam Chair," she said. "The opening bell is waiting." I stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. Cameras flashed nonstop. Necks opened at $45 and jumped to $60 within 15 minutes. The market cap hit $1 billion. Overnight, I became the newest self-made female billionaire in Silicon Valley. After the ceremony, I treated myself to dinner at Le Bernardin, the 3 Michelin-star restaurant Carter always bragged about as for the elite. A place he never took me because he claimed I didn't know how to appreciate it. Rain started falling as I walked out. New York streetlights reflected on wet pavement, turning the city into something romantic and cold. I stood under the awning, waiting for the valet to bring my new Bentley. "Your car is here, ma'am. Sorry for the delay," a hoarse voice said behind the rain. I turned. Time felt like it froze. The man holding the umbrella over me wore an oversized, soaked valet uniform. The slick hair he used to style was now messy, streaked with gray. His face was gaunt and weathered by wind, rain, and probably alcohol. It was Carter. He kept his head down, hand shaking on the umbrella handle, too scared to look at the VIP guest he was serving. "Thank you," I said evenly. At the sound of my voice, Carter jolted and looked up. In a single second, I watched a storm of emotions flash across his dull eyes. Shock, shame, regret, and deep, desperate hopelessness. "So, Sophia?" he stammered, voice breaking under the rain. I looked at him, and surprisingly, I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I felt empty, like I was looking at a stranger. The sweetest revenge isn't tormenting your enemy. It's realizing they no longer have the power to occupy your mind. "Hi, Carter," I said politely. "I heard you avoided prison with a cooperation deal?" His shoulders trembled. I'd read his story in the news. After leaving Nexus, he got hit with back taxes, got sued by Amber and her mother for fraud, and ended up broke. Amber, of course, dumped him the moment his last credit card got declined. Now the entrepreneur of the year was a minimum wage valet trying to pay off debts. I'm sorry," Carter whispered, rain running down his face, unclear whether it was water or tears. "I lost everything. I was wrong. Can you... Maybe he was asking for a job. Maybe a handout. I'll never know, because I didn't let him finish." I opened my wallet and pulled out a bill. Not a $500 bill, a $20 bill, the same denomination I'd thrown on that conference table 14 months earlier. I slid it into his rain-soaked breast pocket. "Keep the tip, Carter," I said, calm and final. "And please, step aside. You're blocking my path to the future." I climbed into the car and shut the door, sealing myself inside the warm, leather-scented interior, away from the cold sidewalk where Carter stood. In the rearview mirror, I saw him frozen in the rain, gripping the damp $20 bill, watching my car disappear into the stream of headlights, until he became nothing more than a small, fading shadow, and finally vanished completely. I smiled and told the driver to put on soft jazz. My life was finally beginning. This story leaves 3 hard lessons that anyone should burn into their brain. Never underestimate the quiet one. Silence doesn't mean weakness or stupidity. Quiet people often observe the most, think the deepest, and act decisively when pushed to the edge. Read contracts before you sign, and before you tear. In business and marriage, your signature can be your shield, or the blade that takes you down later. Never let emotion override reason when legal stakes are involved. Core value beats flash every time. Carter built an image. Sophia built skill. Image can be stripped away and destroyed. Competence and intelligence are permanent assets no one can steal. Dear viewers, that's the ending for the cheating husband Carter. Were you satisfied with how Sophia handled it? In your opinion, was that punishment enough? Or did he deserve even worse? Leave a comment below with justice served if you support Sophia's move. Don't forget to like, share this with the strong women around you, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next premium revenge story. Thanks for listening, and remember, live kindly, but always keep a backup copy of your life.